John McCutcheon, what an honor to have you on Country Pocket today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I live in the Atlanta area, so we're kind of batting down the hatches for the hurricane that's apparently coming our way, but it's not going to be as bad as it was in Cuba or Florida. So
Yes, we
it
are.
may postpone the big Mets Braves uh, series for this weekend. But
We are recording this a little bit earlier than it airs. Just
yeah,
the hurricane by the time this has aired has moved past New York and stuff as well. But hopefully it all goes well for all of us. Ex- Although, as someone who hosts a radio show on Long Island, I can't really wish the Braves well. I
well, we'll just agree to disagree then, huh? It's been a great rivalry all year, hasn't it?
Yes, yes. The new album is Leap, and the first song I played is called Second Hand. John, tell me about the obituary you read that led you to write that song.
Uh, well, one of the things that the pandemic graced me with was the ability to really luxuriate over every part of the newspaper um, that I often would just pass over. And I don't know if it's only the pandemic or it's also, due to my age, I'm not skipping over the obituaries like I used to. And about a year and a half ago, I ran into the obituary of Esther Cohen, who was the oldest Holocaust survivor in Greece. And in the obituary, it mentioned that she had spent the better part of her life since 1945 traveling around to schools and telling kids what had happened to her when she was their age. And so I thought of the people of that era, and not only Holocaust survivors, but World War II veterans, people who worked in the civil rights movement, people who endured amazing things and in some cases accomplished amazing things. That everything is going to be secondhand as they pass on. And Esther's story really struck me, and I figured she deserved at least one song.
Do you think that it's a coincidence that the far right is having this moment in the sun right now, right around the time Esther's generation is dying out and the oldest and the most politically active people are now the baby boomers who never had to endure something like World War II and fascism?
Well, all the remnants of that are certainly still out there. Um, I lived I lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, for about 20 years. That's where I raised my kids. And so when the Unite the Right rally happened back in August of 2017, a song I wrote back then called "The Machine" was about a World War II veteran sitting on his front porch and watching this happen in front of him and just thinking, I thought this was all settled. I didn't fight the Nazis. And I put him in on D-Day, and I had him being a part of the crew that liberated one of the concentration camps. And stuff like that, just alters your life in ways that, people like us who live in relative comfort and isolated from the things that are going on. We have so much information now and so little knowledge. So I think it proves that we have to be vigilant and we can never assume that everything is settled. We're certainly seeing that, in Ukraine these days. And who was it? C.S. Lewis said, people need to be reminded more than they need to be educated. And I have thought that was wise counsel. And you can say something, by essentially writing a song that's an obituary for an old woman that speaks about many more things than just her own life.
Another song on the album, The Troubles, you sort of draw this parallel between modern American politics and the period in Irish history called the Troubles, which was a cross between insurgency and civil war. Can you sort of explain what happened there and how that can be instructive for us in America today?
Well, the song came out of the fact that in 2019, it was, I was invited to participate in a festival in Belfast. And part of the things that they wanted me to do was do songwriting workshops with young Northern Ireland, Northern Irish songwriters. And even though many of them weren't even born when the Good Friday Agreement was signed in 1989, its its presence and the troubles permeated how they looked at the world. And I came home thinking that we have these things that we digest from afar, whether it be in Ireland or Israel or Iraq or Rwanda, where you have two groups that are essentially neighbors. Sometimes, in the case of the Shia and the Shiite, are different branches of Islam, and yet these people are killing one another in much the same way that the people in Ireland did. And we have our own troubles here. And the whole, I guess the whole point of the song was just to say, it's not just over there. It's not just those people. We have this version of it happening right here.
Absolutely. So you have divisions and violence, and then you have the third way. It's a unique song about a man named Carlos who takes a unique stand against segregation. Um, Uses a word I can't necessarily say on the radio, but suffice it to say, instead of using segregated bathrooms, he chooses to relieve himself in the woods.
In the woods outside the factory. And that's
Abs-
actually a true story. Carlos was my father-in-law, and he was born on a farm in central Cuba, and my wife was born in Havana. And like most Cubans at the time, they supported the revolution until they couldn't, and they arrived here in 1964. And he took this job at a local steel mill, knowing nothing about working in a mill, knowing almost no English, and certainly having never lived in a system that divided basic services like water fountains and swimming pools and bathrooms into white and colored. And so this African American guy, Darnell, who was assigned to train him this first day, when he said he had to go to the bathroom, took him up and said, "Here it is." And it was an amusing moment of tension there. And he realized that he couldn't use really either bathroom. And so he just, as a matter of his own kind of private protest, just went out and pissed in the woods. See, I said it on the radio, didn't I? Sorry.
You did, but my listeners are going to hear a little bleep
Bleep.
because you can't. Yep, yeah, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, you can't.
I didn't realize that was one of the words you couldn't say on the radio.
At least my station, that's a no-no.
How about whizzed? Would that be
That's fine.
okay? He whizzed out in the
For
woods.
whatever reason, that's going to be a green light.
Yep, yep.
Um, so, do you think that's sort of something that's important today to think of third ways and creative protests?
Well, I think, we are talking about all kinds of non-binary things these days, but we often don't talk about non-binary thinking. I mean, one of the advantages of being an adult is that you can hold two contradicting opinions in your mind at the same time and not have your head explode. So I think there's a lot, you can read so many things into that particular story. But yeah, I think trying to figure out how you are going to deal with a situation in which you are offered only two uh, choices when in fact you realize, oh, there's way more than two choices. So let's just be a little creative here.
Yes, the slippery slope argument doesn't hold. You can say, no, this is where I draw the line. This is the thing in the middle that we should probably find agreement on. Let's not go to one side or the other necessarily.
Well, you're hearkening back to the Troubles as well. You know, one path or the other, they ask you to choose, casting your lot with a bet you all lose. I remember hearing a story about Eleanor Roosevelt going to a public event, I think in a church, in which they segregated blacks and whites on different sides of the aisle. Or it could have been, you know, an auditorium or something. And she just took her chair and sat down in the center aisle. Again, refusing to say, I don't agree with this solution. And it spoke volumes. I mean, it wasn't like she got up and ranted or anything. She just, by a simple act, like my father-in-law Carlos, that simple act speaks volumes. And I thought it was worth, like Esther Cohen's story, I thought it was worth hearing.
Well, let's hear the fictional story in The Machine, and then the very true story of The Third Way, and we'll be right back.